Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Free Your Mind and Be Free show. My name is Mr. Work Smarter, and I've got one of my closest friends called Andy Ayim with us today. As you can see, we're not in London, apparently it's raining. We're in Malta for my brother's stag do, and today I thought I would take this opportunity to talk about the importance of travelling, because myself and Andy have travelled quite frequently. We wanted to talk about the benefits of travelling. So before we begin, just tell people about yourself, Andy.
Sure, so it's a little bit of background. Over the last 5 years, I've travelled to over 35 countries through work and leisure, and that's seen me work in countries such as South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, Uganda and Kenya, and quite extensively across the west coast of the US in Silicon Valley and San Francisco. And I guess just a little bit of background to kind of how I knew Dennis. About 7-8 years ago in university, we ran an entrepreneurship project which became quite an experiment even out of school, where we ran employability and entrepreneurship workshops for young people in deprived communities. And it was going really well actually, and it was starting to generate some revenue. And then we decided we were teaching people about a path that we haven't yet been on ourselves. And so we took a step back and decided to go and get professional experience and work for reputable companies, because at the end of the day we always talk about this analogy of you'd rather learn to play football from David Beckham rather than Dave Cameron, even though they both grasp the game and they both understand the game. You want someone that's been there and done that. 100%. So that's a little bit behind who I am and how I know Dennis.
Okay, and I would like to start with, what motivated you to travel, Andy? Like, what began this journey for you?
I think for me it started from just being really curious and having an inquisitive nature to myself. So growing up in Tottenham, I learned a lot about multiculturalism growing up, and I value diversity because there's over 90 different nationalities in Tottenham and over 300 languages spoken across Haringey. So I learned to kind of really value that diversity from a young age, and I kind of developed a diversity of thought as a consequence of that. So in 2008, I went on a work experience at a reputable company in the city, and while I was there I noticed a lot of people having conversations about little backpacking adventures that they'd done. And within my community that was a foreign concept, so even running it past my parents and my friends and talking to them about wanting to go travelling, they didn't really understand it. So one day I just kind of packed a bag, went to South America for 3 months.
Yeah, that was crazy.
And had the most amazing experience in my life. But I noticed there was a lack of BME or black and minority ethnics on this trip.
Yeah.
And it was something that I just think our community wasn't really aware of. But for me, it served that curiosity that I had, and it enabled me to kind of really grow, because I was living on the edge of my comfort zone and doing something completely foreign to my culture and upbringing.
Yeah, just to add on that, like for some people, I know the thought of traveling by themselves in the first place is scary. Like, what advice would you give to them in terms of, one, the benefits, but two, how can they come out of that security where they know that obviously they have to go by themselves into an area they've never been to before? Like, what would you say to them?
To be honest, it is scary. I remember going to South America for the first time, and even on the plane ride there's a man next to me from Caracas in Venezuela. He's telling me about 300 different stabbings each week and the different crime statistics. Right. And even though I'm from a tough neighborhood myself, I thought I'll get myself into something serious here, right? And I landed in Lima, and I remember, I'll never forget the first night. It was pitch black. I had to get myself a taxi, and I just thought, what the have I just done?
Yeah.
I just landed into a foreign land. I don't know anyone here. I'm about to stay in a hostel full of strangers.
Yeah.
And I've come from an environment where security means a lot to us. So for me, it was very scary. It was very fearful, but you have to face your fears. And I guess that's just something everyone personally has to battle with themselves. That's you versus you. There's no one else with that game.
Yeah, from my perspective, I think it's so important to travel. Like, I don't travel as frequently as my friend Andy. However, as I said, I travel quite 6-7 times a year, and for me, when I've gone to different countries, I love meeting people from all walks of life. Although sometimes there might be that language barrier, but it's good to adapt and understand that we all come from different cultures and we need to look at things from different perspectives. So I think that side of things is great. And when you build relationships, so for example, you might go to another country now, and I know the owner of this hotel, he's now hooked me up, do you know what I mean, with discounts. So I'm saying there's so many benefits of knowing people from all walks of life.
Yeah, I think just to supplement that, for me, it helped me really monetize on my story. I became much more well-rounded. There's so much more to speak about now when I was going to interviews. I wasn't having a conversation about just my CV and talking from 1998 till today. Rather, I was having a more cultural conversation about places that we'd both been and what we had gained from those experiences, and we're sharing memories. And therefore, you're able to take conversations, especially interviews, to another place. You know, and it's the same when you go back home to your community, to your family, to your friends. You're just having richer conversations because you're more in line with the kind of experiences.
100%. I'm happy you alluded to that point, because a lot of times young people go to interviews like, what do we talk about? But they forget that actually going to different countries and doing different experiences is actually things that the interview wants to hear. Because as I said, they may be to relate, oh, I went there as well. You can have a conversation. That's where people don't see the value in like having conversations about things other people have done as well.
Exactly.
So I think that's good.
Exactly, and with an interview situation in particular, actually, a lot of people don't really understand that all you're doing really is storytelling and try to connect to someone in a short amount of time that you have with them, and enable yourself to be remembered in comparison to everyone else that they're going to see and compare you to anyway. So when you have those kind of stories of you traveling and what you've done outside of work, it kind of enriches that story and it makes you more memorable, especially if they've been to places that you've been to as well. It's an automatic, almost like hanging point for them to remember you by.
Yeah. And I want to touch on your experience at San Francisco, because that's a big thing, because you actually worked with a lot of startups. And I think now that's aligned with what you're trying to do now, because you've written a book. I know you don't really like to talk too much about what you do, but let people know like what first the benefits of your San Francisco experience, and now what you're doing with trying to help young entrepreneurs that have a startup.
Yeah, sure. So I published a book earlier this year called The First Time Entrepreneur's Handbook. It's a free ebook, and it just really kind of shares everything from kind of getting started on your journey as an entrepreneur, especially with your employment at the moment, and figuring out how do I balance employment while getting my ideas off the ground in a cheap and quick way. And that's what the book's really about. And you can get it on andyshvc.com. So that's andyshvc.com. But I'm sure all the details.
Yeah, I'll put it on the description on YouTube. So
yeah. So I guess how that ties back to my traveling is that I spent a considerable amount of time last year in Silicon Valley and San Francisco, working a lot with corporate institutions like banks, with investors like VCs who invest into startups, and with startups themselves. And it gave me a very unique perspective into kind of how to innovate and how to get ideas off the ground and execute on ideas.
Yeah.
So I became really fascinated with executing on ideas. And I think it's really important for a lot of students and graduates to recognize that a lot of the time you're taught to go into careers and have a breadth of experience and just keep on dipping your toe and stuff. But actually, people don't really like those kind of sign-up careers where you just have a quick career and you bounce. What people are looking for is more T-shaped students. So students that have a breadth plus a single depth of experience in a certain subject matter, a certain mastery. And for me, that's executing on ideas. So I moved from the management consulting world into the startup world, and now I'm going into product management. And for me, that's my area of expertise.
Love that. And to end, what would you say is the one advice you would give to young people that, as I said, they may be scared to travel and, as I said, travel around the world and experience different cultures? What would you say the biggest benefit for you is, and the advice you would give to them about the importance of doing it?
Yeah, I think for sure the importance of traveling is just about kind of like broadening your horizons and learning how to see things from different perspectives and different people's paradigms. So it doesn't only enhance your CV and your story at your interview, but it enhances you as a person in terms of how you think and your outlook on life and your outlook on different subject matter. So I would encourage everyone to travel and try and live as much as you can on the edge of your comfort zone, regardless if you're starting a business idea or you're just literally going traveling to get a cultural experience.
Thank you. Cheers. And that's the end of this episode. Look out for another episode of the Free Your Mind and Be Free show. Take care.